Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Game Club. I'm Graham.
And I'm George.
All right, at least once a month, we try and have a premium Game Club conversation with our members on YouTube, Patreon, and Twitch, our premium members. This month, we're going to have a conversation about Wuthering Waves. It literally just came out, yesterday? So it's
Yeah.
super recent.
Super brand new.
Super brand new. A lot of us have been playing it, and we have thoughts on it. I hit level 20. I'm actually above level 20, but I haven't done the world unlock quest yet. So I'm like several XP. I'm probably 22-ish. So I'm about there. We have various levels of people who've played the game, and so we're going to have an interesting conversation, I think, about Wuthering Waves because there's some interesting points, I think, to talk about it when it comes to this game. So,
Yes.
yeah. We've got
There
our
certainly is.
premium. Yeah, right. We've got our premium members here with us. We've got Jodorome, Scorps, and TLK. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey guys, awesome.
Okay.
Glad to have you with us.
So, we're going to go topic by topic. We don't want to drag this out too long. So, the first topic we're going to hit today is the story. And I wanted to swing a little bit. No offense, George. I know TLK is a big RPG story kind of guy. So I really want to hear, TLK, can you tell me, maybe we'll start off, what are some of your favorite games, RPG-based story games? And then what are your thoughts on Wuthering Waves so far?
Yeah, sure. So, to start off, I guess I'm a big fan of, it's called Legend of Heroes. And it's like a, 11 game spanning thing, I think. You know, 11 70-hour RPGs. Like, this is big stuff we're talking about, right? You know, you got to play hundreds of hours if you want to understand the story and know about everything that's going on. And from my experience, most of my favorite games usually are memorable to me in some way in the story. The gameplay alone isn't enough. So yeah, like Graham was saying, I'm big on the stories, and when it connects with me, especially if it's on an emotional level, then I'm gonna remember that game forever. You know, I'm gonna want to keep coming back to it. I'm gonna want to play it. It's gonna be something I think about.
100% agree with that, man. I'm a big story guy for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a story guy whatsoever. If there's a really good story, I'll definitely get into it. But generally, I'm not super interested. How do you feel, TLK, about the story for, and we're going to make a lot of comparisons to these two games specifically, one specifically, but how do you feel about the story of Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail? Did these stories really grab you as kind of a baseline for people to understand, where your perspective's at?
Yeah, they definitely do. I think that, I don't know if you want to call it the Hoyer versus Magic or whatever. There's just something about the way they tell stories, the character expressions, the way they try to build up to big moments, right? That just really hits for me. It's not the same as maybe some RPGs that are more of a tightly condensed story, right? You know, it's more of a long spanning arc. But even when I get bored of playing these games every day, the reason I always inevitably come back to them is because I'm hooked on the story, and I want to know what happens next.
Then let's get to, what do you think of the beginning story? It's first impressions, right? We don't know the whole story yet, but what do you think of the introductory story of Wuthering Waves? How's that gone for you, as someone who's so focused on story?
Yeah, no, it was pretty rough, to be honest. They jump you right into the deep end, right? I spent a long time in the last couple days trying to think about what specifically I didn't like about it, and I was making some comparisons to what Genshin Impact and Star Rail were doing. And there's one key thing that's missing from Wuthering Waves, and that's that there's no introduction. There's no gradual build up and introduction to the world. Like when you first play Genshin Impact, they're not immediately talking about the Abyss and Dainsleif and Celestia and Conria. They're not talking about all that stuff, right? They're just hey, there's a dragon that's attacking the town. Maybe we should try to take him down, And they get to that stuff over time. But within 5 minutes of Wuthering Waves, they're already talking about the tacit of Discord and I don't know what this is. Could you slow down? So I think it maybe have the potential to get better later on as I come to understand it more. But the hook was really bad.
Yeah, I feel like they were just
Interesting.
really desperate to just prove to everyone that there was going to be deep lore and that there was a lot to this world, and it was, more than meets the eye, which seems so unnecessary given like the fantastical kind of artsy intro, which I really liked, by the way. And then they just kind of, as TLK is saying, they just jump you into so much information. Another thing I think they really don't do themselves a lot of favors on is not only is there so many like lore based terms, but like I feel like half of them aren't translated. Like I'm totally
Localized well,
fine
yeah.
with some games having like characters and certain aspects of the translation not translated for purposes, whatever it may be. No problem. But I feel like there were so many things that I was just like, I don't know what's going on, almost strictly because not only do I not know the lore implications of what you're talking about, but like half of these words are freaking Chinese, and I don't know freaking what's going on with this whatsoever. It was just very confusing, and I would have appreciated things been like just translated a little bit more, or just less terms be given, right? Just like pick one. You can't do both, and you're throwing way too much at me. And as a guy who doesn't really focus on the story too much, if you're not hooking me in the first couple minutes, bro, I'm gonna start skipping through everything else until you can like prove to me through like a cutscene that I have to watch that I'm like, oh, something interesting is really happening. Then I'll like read a little bit, and if it's still not grabbing me, I just move on. How did you feel, George? Is this like a similar experience to what you were having?
100%. I'm also like TLK. I'm a huge story guy. I think story like I realize there are different types of games that go for different things, but games where story is a pillar, I think it's got to be really good. If it's a pillar that's lackluster, then gameplay alone, the gameplay would have to be exceptional for me to be all right. You know what? I'll keep going because even though the story's kind of crap, the gameplay is good. As far as like Hoyoverse games go, I think what they're delivering is good. I think how they deliver it is terrible. It is
Hmm.
way too long to get to anything, and like half of this stuff could be a post-it note, yet they make a novel out of it. And we've talked about this plenty of times. It's my problem with Hoyoverse games. This story for Wuthering Waves, for one, it was extremely anime. Like over the top anime. Like there was like that one scene where the protagonist walks out of the building and then you see like the feet of these two red characters like watching her, and then
Uh,
above them is like the one girl with the like special eye watching them, and it's just like it literally felt like that
uh,
one meme where it's like people pointing each other like the gun, and then the person behind them the gun, and then the dude like
with the
scoping at them. It's
sniper.
just like yeah,
Yeah,
dude.
it's like I 100%. I literally laughed out loud when I saw that because it was like, oh yes, of course there's someone watching my character. And then they panned out to another person. I was like, is this a meme? Like there's a person watching the person watching me. Like what is going on here? Like that
Yeah.
seems a little silly.
100%. And so, like, for one, it's like that's like maybe I'm wrong because my knowledge in anime isn't as broad, but I feel like that's like an anime thing, and they're just like diving into that anime cliche, which is kind of my problem with many of the other aspects that we're going to talk about. But I feel it's like very cliche. Feels like they're kind of just checking the boxes, like, oh well, we have to need to create some intrigue. What can we do to do that? Oh, okay, let's just artificially check that box, and like, oh, we need to have um the super powerful entity, let's check that box, and we need to do this other thing, and it just
True.
yeah. And then again, the onboarding, like TLK was saying, is just, oh, if we don't get the tacits of discord against the convergence, the things will collide and it will create a war against the warbles, and it's just like, bro, okay, so many terms
George
all at
only made
once.
one of those things up.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, all right, guys, thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, so far the story has just rolled straight over me.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was a point early in the story where within like the first hour and a half, you're sitting in a laboratory talking to like scientists doing sciency things for like way too freaking long.
Yeah.
And then I just like had an epiphany like halfway through that experience, and I went, what are we doing here? Like what, like
Well,
not
don't
just
you
like
need to
from a,
know how the library indexing works, Graham? Don't
but
you want to
like
know the deep lore?
not just from like a story perspective, but from like a general video games perspective. Like, seriously, what are we doing here? What are they thinking? Not only have they inundated us with like terms and too much lore and half translated terms and conditions, whatever the frick, but the fact that we're going from like just the beginning of the game right into sitting into a lab listening to monologue on lore on monologue on lore, and it's just like, this is not in any video game how you would introduce the game whatsoever. Like, not even from a gacha game perspective. And I think gacha games all across the board have pretty mediocre stories. I don't think I've ever seen a gacha game that impressed me with its story. And this is like one of the worst examples ever. If this was a single player game, the beginning of this game would hook nobody. It would be so bland and boring and just overwhelming that it's just like, how did they think that this was the right way to go about introducing characters or this world or players to the world and like hooking them in? Like, this is not going to hook anyone. We're sitting in a laboratory listening to expository dialogue. I even hit a cutscene just recently, which I did recently. I think you could do it earlier, where I won't spoil too much. Not that there's much to be spoiled, but there's a card character, and he's been kidnapped, or he's been captured, not kidnapped. He's been captured. And the dialogue scene literally went for probably 15 to 20 minutes. I wish I was exaggerating. And I was clicking, not reading anything. I was just click, 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 click.
Boy.
And it was like 15 to 20 minutes of dialogue. And then, because after that scene with this guy, it showed another scene that was unskippable with another character. And luckily, this character was really freaking cute. And so it made it bearable. But I mean, it was just absolutely freaking terrible, dude. I was like, I can't believe this is something that's happening right now. It's so freaking bad. And the most remarkable thing of all of this is not allegedly, I think this is a fact, but in the closed beta 1, the story was so poorly received that they rewrote 90% of the story, and this is the rewritten story that we got. This. Like, it was worse than this before. That's remarkable. Right? Like, that's freaking crazy. And so, it's not to say that this game is total trash, right? The story is very poorly conveyed and delivered. There might be a brilliant story under there, but for George, it's too anime, and for me, and for everyone, it's too expository. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
So, and so there may be a great story here. The thing is, though, Wuthering Waves is a really good gacha game, and it's generally a really good game, just as it is. And so having this story really kind of be the foremost thing that you're experiencing when you start the game is, I think, pretty unfortunate.
True. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I want to hear from our other boyos. Just get some quick thoughts on what they thought for the story.
Jotaro, what were your initial impressions of the story? I know you haven't played too much, but you've played at least the beginning of the story, so I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are on that.
It reflects a lot on exactly what you just said. Pretty much the same feelings. I felt like a lot of things were unnecessary, and I was a little frustrated that I couldn't skip them. And I mean, at least half of them. So at least. But in general. But I'm not that far, so I can't say anything for sure. But so far, I'm not liking it too much.
Says a lot, though, when you're frustrated that you can't skip the very beginning of the story of a game.
True. That's not a good first impression, right? Yeah. What did you think, Scorps? I'm really interested in hearing what your take is. I wonder if you have the similar take or if you're maybe more positive on it.
I also like to start by saying I haven't done too much of the story either.
Sure.
But it's all right. I like the maybe first two cutscenes, and from there it really slows down.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different, words at you, terms. I'm pretty good at remembering them, but it's a lot. That's about it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if even you had an easy time remembering like terms and stuff, and this was still a lot for you, I think it says a lot. I think it says a lot that, like, I think a lot of us have very different takes and backgrounds when it comes to like games and anime games and stuff across the board of just the people here conversating, and we're all coming across with this like, guys, the story's not doing it for like anybody. So I think it's a pretty big, problem. I wonder if they will take some time to revamp that or what, but I mean, it can't be good for onboarding in the future if they want this game to really have legs.
Yeah, they did say they're gonna allow you to skip more, so they must have like
That
had
is-
feedback, which
that's
is,
a-
I mean, it's a solution. It's not the best solution,
Yeah.
but it's a solution at least.
Jeez, yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be a good fix for me at least, because at this point I'm skipping everything. So, all right, so that's enough harping on that. Let's get to some things that are actually really good, and there's a lot good about Wuthering Waves. So, the next thing we want to talk about is the characters. We could talk really briefly about the character design. I think back in the day when this was in CBT1, even as recent as CBT2, but not quite CBT2, I think we've seen a big art shift. Back when this was announced and the first closed beta happened, I made a call that I thought the game was a little bit too bland and the art style was a little bit too grounded. The colors were too earthy. It wasn't bright and anime enough. They were really going for like a darker setting compared to like something like Genshin, which was clearly an inspiration, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So I made a call that they were going to brighten the game up and make it look more like, not necessarily Genshin, but they were definitely going to brighten it up, make it look more colorful, make the characters look even more anime. And eventually, CBT2 and into the full release, they have definitely done that. The game is much brighter across the board. The color palette of the areas is much brighter. The characters have had a really good overhaul. And I think they've landed in a pretty good spot for the character designs. And as I know, a lot of us here are, I'm not going to say waifu aficionados, but we play a lot of gacha games, and there's a lot of waifu-y characters in there. So I'm interested to see what everyone's opinion is on how the art style has landed. Because for me, I think it's doing a good job. It's not perfect, but I really like the direction they're going. George, what do you think?
I think
As
we
the
should let some of
normie.
the other people go first because I don't want to be the downer immediately. So
Oh, great.
let's other
Okay.
people go first, and then I'll round up the rear here after they
Okay,
share
sounds
their
good.
thoughts.
All right, Jotaro, we'll start from the top. Jotaro, what are your thoughts on that?
So far, the character design is, I mean, it's not anything new. We've seen it before. It's great. I like it. There's more characters, more of it. Some people like it, some people don't. I like it personally. It's great. There's this really cool red-haired character that I'm looking forward to that's going to be releasing next week or 2 weeks. Other than that,
Same.
the current roster, I'm not that impressed, but I'm still looking forward to what's coming up.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, Scorps?
Yeah, they're fine. I look at them, I think, yep, those are gacha game characters. Look nice.
True.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think that's a pretty good impression actually, because that's a lot how I feel. It's like these are good. They're not exceptional, but they're good. They're good characters. They're interesting enough. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good impression. TLK, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I do think they're a bit worse than what Genshin and Honkai Star Rail is rolling out. Not bad, but like most of them are definitely a bit worse. And also, they're kind of similar to each other, I kind of feel. Like, you put some of these characters together, like, you put Rover, I think Baiji, and, what's the other black-haired girl's name?
Either
I don't
way.
remember
Anyway,
any names. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like they just kind of look really similar to each other. A lot of the characters in this game. There's only a couple of characters that stand out to me as like truly distinct characters. So yeah, it's not bad. It's definitely fine, and like I'll find the characters that I like. But overall, I'd say it's below what Hoyoverse is putting out. Definitely.
Sure. Yeah, which would be like the
Interesting.
general, industry standard at this point. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I can look at a character and almost immediately know like, oh, this is, even so though I've stopped playing Genshin forever, like there's a certain Genshin-esque thing about characters. Same with like Star Rail. I can look at a character and be like, oh, this is even if it's not necessarily a Star Rail character, be like, this is a character I think could be in Star Rail. I look at the cast of Wuthering Waves and I'm just like, this is an anime character from where? Maybe part of that is I'm more familiar with Genshin and Star Rail. But the other thing too is I said this before, like the story was kind of cliche. I feel like the characters are kind of cliche, not only in like what they are, but also like in the personalities. Like there's the spunky girl, and then there's the serious one, and there's the caring slash doting mother-like character, and there's the tech girl, and then again, it feels like they're going through and they're like, okay, well, we need to have one of each just to appease, you know, the entire crowd. And I understand that from like a game making standpoint, but from me, George's personal taste is just like, well, I guess the boob physics in this game feel way more contrived than freaking Hoyoverse games. It's just like, geez, guys, like I don't know how anyone looks at that and is just like, oh man, these are attractive. It's just like freaking just floating bags, just like running around, man. And I am a guy who likes them thick. Okay. I have no issue saying that. So, you know, I'm not offended by bigger breasts or anything like that. But it's just like, even I'm just like, dude, tone it down, man. Like, this is a straight man, you know, saying all. I should say straight man in quotations. I am a straight man, but this is a straight man saying, like, bro, turn it down, okay?
Oh my gosh,
it's a little too much.
That's funny.
So yeah, it was the characters. From an art style perspective, as far as like color palettes and all that goes, I think it's fine. I think the game itself is actually really pretty, but we'll get to that probably later. But the characters themselves, there's no. In fact, the only character that I'm like, oh man, this is like a really attractive character is the first one you get, the first 4-star you get off the thing. She's like the lab girl with the ice girl. What's her name? I don't remember.
She's got like the dinosaur, the dragon.
Yeah, the like white
kind of dragon thing. Okay, yep.
Yeah. So she's the only one, and like I said, yeah, like a lot of the characters, they just kind of click cliche boxes, and like the one spunky girl too. Some of the animations, like she acts like the way cringe anime people on TikTok act, and I was just like watching this. I'm like, bro. Everything is like too much, girl. Just tone it down a notch because it's too much. So yeah, the characters, unfortunately, they didn't really click with me.
Yeah, understandable. So. Yeah, I think they were like good. I pretty much echo everyone's thing, right? Like they were good. They could be better. They're not distinct enough, but it's fine. So
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
You know what I was really impressed by, though, is the gameplay of the characters. That's something that really, really impressed me. I was not expecting the complexity. They're not overly complex, but I wasn't expecting, maybe complexity is not the right word, but the variety of gameplay that they're displaying here and how they can do gameplay is really interesting. Like TLK was telling me yesterday, he's got a character where... So all the characters have like this resonance bar or whatever it's called on the bottom of the screen. And they use, what they do is Kuro, the developers, they use this bar in a various ways of how a character is supposed to work. So like TLK's Ice character has the bar, but only like a section on like the right side of the bar is highlighted. Just kind of like, you know, maybe 10% or 15% of that bar. And TLK will hold down a button and a little indicator will go across the bar, and you have to let go of the button when it gets to that highlighted section to do this super strong attack. And as you do your ultimate, that section of the bar gets bigger, so it's easier to let go at the right spot. And so, but then when you get it, it goes back down and you have to kind of time it better the next time. But I thought that was like pretty interesting. Like I never expected the bar. Like usually the bars are filling up and you spend them in some variety of way. Like I wasn't expecting it to be like almost like a mini game in the character itself. Like it's remarkable. So there's a lot of these really interesting, like this character works like this, like, you do a bunch of basic attacks and then you fill up a bar and then you click and hold and spend the bar. Or you have another character where you do some attacks and then you can do I think it's the skills. You do a skill and then it spends your HP, and then the skill doesn't have a cooldown. You just use it based on HP, and then you can click and hold at the end of doing a specific combo, and then you can get your HP back if you are landing your finals or whatnot. I think it actually heals even if you don't land it. But there's enough of a variety of gameplay that I've been impressed with what they're doing from the gameplay perspective. And for me, gameplay is everything. You could throw the story, you could throw the frickin' general character designs, within reason. I don't freaking care. If you have really good gameplay, I'm here for it. And so for now, my plan is I'm just going to keep playing the game, medium to long term, potentially. We'll see how they do. But for the short and medium term, for sure, I'm in. I want to see what the gameplay they're doing for other characters. I'm having a good time just going through and playing it. So I've been really impressed. George, you haven't played too much. Do you have much of an impression on the gameplay so far?
So I don't have as much of an impression on the combat part of the gameplay. I do have some thoughts, on just things that are just, I guess, inherent to the gacha model. And this is, again, this is not, I don't think this is a point against Wuthering Waves. It's more of just like a preference of where I am currently. Because I don't think the game is offering anything for me currently that would override the things that I don't want to engage with that are inherent to gacha stuff. Like, I'm willing to concede the combat, like from all that you explained, it seems like they really have a grasp on that, and they're being really creative with that. I like the is it residence, I think that they call it, where you can like pick a monster and kind of use one of their moves and stuff.
The echoes.
Echo, that's what it is. Echo, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the echo thing as a mechanic is really cool.
Really
and
cool.
and it gives you an incentive to kind of explore and see what monsters are out there and what echoes.
They're also, I don't know if you know this, they're the relic system as well. So like they're the equipment that you equip as well. It's really, really cool system. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, so like I think all that kind of stuff is cool. However, unfortunately with gachas, just a lot of the stuff you do is mostly inconsequential. Kind of harkening back to the story, like inconsequential dialogue options. And a lot of the things feel to me like busy work. If there was characters that I found interesting enough, not to say that like waifu collecting has always been, the biggest driving force, me, freaking normie takes over here. It's not the biggest driving force, but if I'm playing a game, I might as well collect the hottest characters. Why not, right?
Sure.
But it's not the biggest driving force. And so without that motivation there, because I already don't necessarily jive with the characters, and then also a lot of the stuff that comes with gachas, like having to log in every day. Yeah, it's not the biggest mental burden, but it is a mental burden.
Sure.
And so having to worry about that, having to worry about stamina, and I'm not necessarily the kind of guy to be like half-hearted. Like I can force myself, but it's not my natural inclination, right? I'm more like, all right, I'm either gonna do this or I'm not gonna do that, right?
Right. 100%.
And so like that's a mental burden that I don't want to have to deal with. It feels like every single time I'm going to be working towards a new character, which is just, again, part of the way gachas work and stuff like that. So all those other gameplay things are things I don't want to necessarily interact with.
Yeah.
And what the game is offering on the other aspect, as good as it appears to be, it's not currently enough to push me over the edge to kind of want to commit and all that stuff. So
yeah,
that's what I have to say about the gameplay stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think if we want to add in the traversal as well, it's been pretty good. I think the pairing in the combat system, I don't really love that it's tied to the normal attack because it kind of makes it just happen automatically or kind of awkward to do. And the same thing with the traversal. There's a grapple hook, which is really fun to use, but it's on a 10-second cooldown. Like that sucker should restart every time you hit the ground. And you should be able
to grapple everything, is my opinion.
Well, you can grapple anytime. You can just click the grapple button.
But you either just shoot up, right? Unless there's like a specific indicator.
Right.
I wish I could like, hook the ground in front of me and like pull myself with momentum and like
that would certainly be something.
I would play the game forever if I could do that.
Yeah, so I think like there's just a couple of things here and there. If you could just interact with these kind of engagements a little bit more, like the traversal and whatnot, I think it would make an even more elevated experience. But generally, I've been really impressed with the gameplay, and it's enough for me. But I can understand what you were saying with like the burden of having to play and log into gacha games consistently and keep up with what they're demanding of you. I can understand why it's not enough, especially with the lacking story and the kind of the semi-lacking characters. It just doesn't culminate to be like enough of a reason for you to engage with the game as a whole.
Yeah.
So we have other anime gacha game aficionados here. I want to get your guys' take. We'll start from the bottom up here. TLK, what gachas are you playing right now?
So right now I am playing Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and Wuthering Waves, and I'm kind of playing Octopath on my phone, but I've been kind of iffy on that lately.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm juggling a few.
So, how are you feeling right now with your massive repertoire of gachas that you're keeping up with? How are you feeling of your short to medium term commitment to Wuthering Waves? Is this like a game you're going to be playing or what?
I think I'm going to stick with it for a while. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but I'll say it now since I think it factors in. But I did finish the story that's out so far.
Oh wow, dude, you breezed through that.
the last couple chapters were pretty freaking good, actually.
Oh,
okay.
So I have some hope for the future. And that combined with the gameplay stuff that I'm about to talk about has got me feeling optimistic about the game overall.
Okay. Very interesting. So what about the gameplay has really grabbed you? What's the thing that stands out the most?
One thing that's really different from Genshin is so when you're playing Genshin, the way your teammates coordinate with other teammates is just, this element goes well with this element, right? But they don't actually like glue together the playstyles very well most of the time.
Sure, yeah.
Now, in this game, I feel like they really do. Like, I can be, like, using a skill that, like, moves me towards the opponent and pops them into the air, and then I can switch to someone else, and their intro skill does a combo on them because they're in the air, and then I can, like, do something because they're there, and then I can switch to someone else who has a skill to take advantage of that situation, right? And, like, the more I'm starting to play with my same, like, 3 characters that I've kind of settled on, I'm starting to imagine up, like, combos of how I can use them together. And that's just really cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Yeah, that's true. The intro and outro skills is a pretty interesting concept when it comes to switching around. And I like that they've kind of generally started they have like a structure where one character is kind of the point character and you have the other kind of supporting characters. It's a pretty interesting gameplay loop. And it's teams of 3 as well, so it's not 4 like in Genshin. I feel like that's just the right amount. I feel like 4 is too much, but 2 would be too little. I think 3 is like a really good team size for a game like this, which also is Zenless Zone Zero's size as well. But
question, actually, let's have the other guys talk, and then I'll ask you guys a question about the combat.
Can I say like 1 or 2 more things?
Of course. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I just wanted to mention that I feel really similar to you with the pairing, because I just came off playing Stellar Blade, which is a game that's all about like parrying and deflections, and compared to that, I'm like, okay, trying to attack when they're attacking just feels wrong. Like it just doesn't feel right. But then there's all these other situations where like I just have like a flurry attack and it just kind of automatically parries anything that comes out during that time. And I'm like, this feels too strong, right? So
like why have parry? Just undermine your own parry system. Like
it's very strange, and I'm curious if they're really gonna stick with it as it is, because I don't feel like I'm ever gonna do anything other than like, I know if I mash this move, it's just gonna parry everything, and that's like, I might start to like rely on that kind of thing, and I'm a little worried about the ramifications for that in the combat.
Yes, it's a big problem for me. It's something that could even like long-term really damage my enjoyment of the combat itself, because parrying is like one of my favorite things to do in games. And the parrying in this game does feel quite satisfying to do, and you like interrupt the enemy's attacks. But the fact that you're doing it so consistently by accident, and the fact that you have to like you see like the parry thing come up and you have to like stop attacking and then start attacking again like at that moment, it just doesn't feel right. Like I just want a button. Just give me a button so when that comes up, I can parry them and we can just all go our happy separate ways. I really don't like how the parry is implemented. I hope it's something that can be changed, but it seems like really intricate to like the attacking stuff, but I guess we'll have to see. I wonder if that will get changed. Does that sum up your thoughts, TLK, or do you have another thing?
Last thing I was just going to say is that the perfect dashing feels really sick. I love the way it's implemented.
You're not the only one to say that. Mokana has said perfect dodging is like his favorite thing in games, like the most satisfying. And I mentioned to him, I was like, listen, buddy, the dodging in this game is really good, but it feels way better in Zenless Zone Zero. Like the dodging in Zenless Zone Zero is, whew, it's freaking good stuff, baby. But yeah, Scorps, what are your thoughts on the gameplay so far?
I'm really enjoying it. It's just really good. Combat feels good. Has good death. More than just like swap character, press skill, press alt, swap to next character like Genshin.
Yeah.
Can I also talk about like open world and traversal, or is that
Of course.
later?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I've spent like 90% of my time running around and doing stuff, not actually doing the main story at all.
Nice.
It's very fun running around, climbing things, vaulting over them, grappling around.
Yeah.
100%.
I like open worlds.
Yeah, I love that you can like run up the side of mountains and stuff. It's not like, typical traversal stuff. In fact, when I saw when I was running up the cliffs and stuff, I immediately thought to myself, I was like, what are we doing in other games? Why do we climb at all? Why are we allowing ourselves to play video games that we go like slowly climbing up a mountain? We're playing video games, folks. We should be running up those mountains. Why are we freaking climbing slowly up mountain walls? This is unacceptable. No other game past this point should ever make us slow climb up a wall again. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Climbing is annoying in 90% of the games.
So stupid.
It's implemented.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Squares, because that's freaking, it's been amazing. I love that. It's awesome. Yeah, the traversal's been really fun. I'm enjoying it a lot. Jotaro, what are your thoughts so far on the gameplay? I know you haven't had a ton of time, but hopefully you've had enough to get some impressions.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say I really agree with the last point that Scorp just said. The climbing feels really good, that you can just go right up and just climb up instead of wasting your time. But for the gameplay part of it, I do feel like it's easily probably the best point that this game has. Easily in terms of like the quality that it gives. And in general, it feels very smooth. I really like what TLK said when he said the entry and the exit skills. That
yes,
helps a lot, and it feels very smooth and very responsive. It feels really rewarding too, to like play on your own style and which characters you want or whatever you want to do, really. I also really like the echo, and everything's great. I have a couple problems that I don't think most people actually will complain about, but for me personally, like controller support doesn't feel very good. I mean, there's controller support, but it doesn't seem like as responsive as you're playing on keyboard, so that's like one of my problems personally.
Interesting.
In the other closed betas where you could actually play the game on 120 FPS. I know not a lot of people are playing higher than 60, but that's something that kind of bothers me, that it was an option before and they took it off. Maybe they're going to bring it back.
Yeah.
But for me, that's my take.
Sure. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, I wonder why they would take that away.
Yeah,
very strange.
Now that we've had kind of everyone's take on gameplay, because one of the things, and I want to get your thoughts, and it'll probably have to be quick because we're almost running out of time. But how deep and satisfying do you guys foresee the combat becoming later down the line? Because like that's one of my issues right now. It doesn't feel like it will be deep enough for me to want to do the quote unquote busy work required to like gear up my characters, level up new characters, get all the stuff that's required for every new character that I get. But if it's like something where the combat is just phenomenal, that itself is enough of a motivation, right? To kind of motivate me to play the game and stuff. It's just how do you foresee that going, if you can at all?
Yeah, I foresee it. The way I see it is when it comes to live service games like this is the starting point, right? Like when you look at older characters in other gacha games or just kind of games in general that are live servicing and have characters coming out, the initial base roster of characters is always like, when you look back a couple of years from now, you go, those characters, the mechanics are so cute and adorable. Like it's all just so simple and easy, right? Those are simpler times. Now we have like Yu-Gi-Oh level freaking descriptions of skills and, super complex mechanics. So I feel like we're only just getting started. And that's one of the things that really excites me is it really feels like, in comparison to like Hoyo games, and no shade on Hoyo games, lots of us enjoy those games as well, but it really feels like in Hoyo, in Genshin specifically, it feels like the characters were just kind of made and then you put them on a team together, right? There's not a specific synergy per se, but in Wuthering Waves, it feels like, especially with the intro and outro skills, it feels like characters were made to be on a team. in a way that the Genshin characters aren't. And so I'm very interested to see how they're going to facilitate the interesting depth that they have in the characters themselves, along with this like really this like high focus on like a 3-person team and how the characters really synergize with each other. So that's, I think, where if that's where we're starting, I think that the future holds a lot of promise for what the characters are going to offer. As in terms of like what the bosses and stuff are going to offer, there's been some bosses that I've really enjoyed so far, and there's been some bosses that have been kind of hit or miss. And so I'm interested to see how that kind of evolves over time, because there's still a bunch of bosses I haven't done. But I think we're at a pretty good starting point. If this is the base that we're going from, there's only going to be more complexity and better refinement as we go. So I think it's a bright future ahead.
That's certainly something to think about, and it does make me pause. I guess we'll just kind of have to see how that plays out. Because I do like some of the things that they're doing with the combat, right? Like, I want to make that clear. Is it enough? Right now, maybe not, but like it's the thing that's piqued my interest the most out of everything. So,
all right. Well, in the interest of time, we're going to move over to art direction, and we're probably going to touch on this. There's not a lot to say. I am not like a huge artsy guy, but I feel like the art and the monster design, like the landscape and the monster design, have really kind of captured my interest. I think they've done a really, really good job. I think part of it is because they know that the ecosystem is built into how the characters play. And so really doubling down on making good, interesting monsters just goes a long way. They get a lot of dividends out of that. And so I've been really impressed. That one scene at the beginning where the camera flips, the character, the MC is in the water, and the camera flips and it's upside down.
Beautiful shot, dude.
Oh,
that's an amazing shot.
What a scene, dude. Yeah. So like I really, really liked that scene. I liked just the landscape looks so freaking beautiful. And the monsters there's a lot of interesting monsters and stuff like that. So I think generally they're doing a really good job with the art direction. I'm excited to see more of the areas. I hope they have like more varied areas. While the areas right now look beautiful, a lot of them are very similar. So I'm hoping we're going to get some really fantastical areas, because they've shown that they clearly have some great art ideas. I just want to see those brought to life. Like let's get some interesting landscapes out there.
Yeah, one thing that I like is that they're mixing both sci-fi and fantasy elements all into one. And I really like when games or when anything does that, because there's no rule saying you can't mix them, and so often they're not mixed. And I that's I don't even know if necessarily that's like an art. That's more like an art theme, and I think that gives them a lot of room for a lot of potential growth and stuff. And then other than that, the only thing I'll just say is like what is currently in the game I find very pretty. Like the landscapes and everything, it's pretty, it's well done.
All right, I want to make sure we have enough time to get to this question. This is the elephant in the room, which is this game is clearly taking a lot of inspiration, and that word is doing a lot of work here, from Hoyo games. It's like from the gacha to the UI to the general gameplay loop to, there's a lot of themes at the beginning. The main character gets like a thing either taken out of them or put into them, and it's definitely not a Stellaron, guys. It's definitely not that. And then there's like big characters who seem imposing, and who knows who they are in the future and stuff like that. Right? It seems like they're taking a lot of elements from Hoyo games. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. I can understand that. But it seems like they're really shameless when it comes to taking these kind of elements. So like for me, it's not something that would ever prevent me from playing the game. And it does seem like they have their own original ideas. It seems like they didn't just like copy Genshin 1-to-1 and that was it. They copied Genshin 1-to-1 and then came up with their own original ideas, which is, it's not nothing. Like running up the grapple thing, which is kind of, I guess, a bit of a copy, at least a little bit. But the like running up the walls, and certainly the combat system is a great evolution on like some of that kind of Genshin combat. Not that I know there's PGR, so they obviously have their own combat for a while now. But do you think, I'm not exactly sure how to posit this question, but Do you think this is something that people should scoff at? Is this something that should make people want to walk away from the game? Or is this like, listen, let them cook and like, let them take the stuff from Genshin and Hoyoverse games so that they can now work on their own stuff, so they have to invest less resources in figuring all this other, like, how do we do a UI and a gacha and this and that and that. They can just take that, and then now we can have them focus more on the stuff that they're good at, like the combat and other things. Or is this something of like, we shouldn't be copying this much? This is maybe a little more.
So I don't know how prevalent this is in the video game world as a whole, or I guess more specifically in the gacha world, but I feel like iterating on somebody else's product is just the way of the world. Whether it's fair, unfair, like it or not, it is what it is. How many things can you think of in the real world where it's like, oh, this is X thing, but better? And, it just feels like that's how things have always worked. To prevent that in the game dev space, I can see why people might have like a negative reaction to it initially, because that in many ways, video games are art. And like kind of copying someone's song or someone's book or someone's story or whatever, right? It's like, bro, you just copied this person's piece of art. Like, why would you do that? And in art, it's like less appropriate and more frowned upon because art is kind of different than a product. But then on the other hand, yes, video games are art, but they're also a product. And so, like,
where do you draw the line?
Exactly. Where do you draw the line as to like how much iteration is generally allowed? For me personally, this specific example is not something that bothers me. I feel like a lot of these upgrades are things that Genshin could have themselves done. And since they've opted not to, at least like in the traversal front, since they've opted not to, like if it wasn't Wuthering Waves, someone was going to step in there. So I think for this specific example, it's not as egregious as it could otherwise be for other instances. But yeah, it's a thing where I struggle, right? Like, where do you draw the line in something like this? And I guess it's a roundabout way of saying I don't know.
Yeah. Jodorome, we've touched on art and the elephant in the room. Do you want to give us your thoughts on those two topics real quick?
Well, I don't have much to say other than agree with most of what you guys said, especially in like the copycat side of things. Like, I do generally think that a lot of things were taken, and I'm honestly like thinking like if they even like have like employees from Hoyo in their office or whatever, because
scouted out some people.
Yeah, if they poached anyone, because it's especially to me it's suspiciously similar, like to the characters, to the UI, to everything that makes the game work. It's all the same. So it's really, it's all suspicious to me. But, more of what a lot of people like. So, a lot of people won't complain.
Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. Corpse, what are your thoughts on those? Or if you don't have any, that's fine as well.
As a former Genshin player, I think it's fine. And they've done a lot of changes that I wish Genshin would have done like years ago. They've improved enough that it's fine for me. And a lot of the systems are just like game systems, like Battle Pass looks the same, but Battle Passes are in plenty of games, that kind of thing. Like gacha systems are in plenty of games. You just made it the way Genshin did it, but better.
True. Yeah, I feel like that's a running theme for Wuthering Waves. Wuthering Waves is trying to usurp Genshin's position, or at least try and be a strong number 2. And if they want to have that position, they need to do all of the good things that Hoyo is doing, and then do them better and be more generous and have better gameplay. They need to, it's gonna be a really good situation for anyone who's enjoying Wuthering Waves. You are gonna eat well. They are going to fight tooth and nail to keep you, to entice you, to shower you with gifts, to make the game as great as possible, because they are trying so hard to beat Hoyo, or at least, again, be a strong number 2. And I think it's a win. It's gonna be a win for everybody. Right? Like, this is a game that if you're playing, you're going to be winning. And the reason why Genshin is so slow to iterate is because they just don't have any competition. And so I've seen people, TLK, maybe you can touch on this a little bit, but I've seen people saying that now that Wuthering Waves was getting closer to release, Genshin's starting to implement quality of life things and gameplay things that people have been asking for a long time.
Yeah, no, definitely. there's a thing that's happening where they're after 3 years they're finally expanding the resin cap, right? And people have been asking for that for years, and
3 years.
so suspiciously it's just happening right now, right? And there are other things that I'm not going to get into because they're leaks, but like there's other
Okay.
things that I've seen that are coming as well, and I'm like, oh man, they're afraid of this game, and
Yeah.
they realize that they have to like start making changes. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good thing. Now, without a doubt, Wuthering Waves might be the most shameless ripoff I've ever played in my life. But as a selfish player, I just see it as a win, right? Because they're just, it feels like, you know, I don't know if you've ever felt like you're playing a game, you like it, but there's things you don't like it, and you're like, oh, I wish I could make my own version of this, but I would change this and this. It feels like the people who made Wuthering Waves are people who like Genshin, but they just wanted to do that. They wanted to do their stuff that Genshin refuses to do, and that's like what's going on with like the artifact system being different and like the combat being better and like the game being
All
more
right.
generous.
You convinced me. I said I don't know. I think this form of iteration, it brings about competition, and I think at the end of the day, then it's a good thing.
Nice.
I
Yep.
think, yeah.
Genshin is going to improve because of Wuthering Waves.
Wow.
So-
like
so
factually,
really-
I think that's the thing.
Yeah, so really, like, Wuthering Waves and Genshin players are all going to freaking benefit from this. I mean, competition
Yeah.
is always good. Always.
It's always good.
Always.
Yep. Nice.
Okay. Well, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. If you want to join us on a future conversation, go ahead and check out our Patreon, Twitch subscriptions, and YouTube membership.
YouTube membership. We're
That's
everywhere.
right. We're everywhere. This has been a lot of fun. We got to get on stream. We're late for our stream. But George, do you have any closing thoughts on that you want to throw out?
I think I've said my piece. It's a great game. All my negative thoughts about it are not necessarily a harp on the game, but rather just what I'm looking for currently. But yeah, man, I wish you guys success in your future polls. I wish the game success, as we just talked about. Competition's great all around, and it's long overdue that Genshin got some competition. So I
For
think
sure.
it's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Jodorome, do you want to throw out anything real quick as a final thought?
No, not really. Thank you everyone for coming here, and please, if you see this, join us next time here.
That'd be
be
awesome.
great.
Fun to have more people.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be
100%.
great. Awesome.
Yep.
Scorps, you got anything for us?
It's pretty nice to see more than one person in a PGC video.
Thank you, Scorps. Thank you for
Alright,
being here.
bye-bye.
All right, TLK, you got the final word.
Play Wuthering Waves so that Genshin will stay. They have to keep making changes too.
True. Wuthering
Oh,
Waves
gosh.
will need to be
Play
successful
the
for that.
True. Excellent. All right, a perfect message to send us off. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out here, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care.